Let's talk about fireside chats. My mum always said I was a bit of a obsessive when it came to fire. I want to talk about something sort of related to fire, that is the fireside chat, a term that's become really popular in the last sort of 12 months in terms of what it means by having something similar to a expert panel or a group discussion, face-to-face or one-on-one, or those kind of things that are a concept of at a session, in a conference or some sort of user group meeting, when we don't actually have predefined content. We don't have a particular speaker in mind, or we may have a couple of people up at the front, but we don't have a set topic or a set of content or slides, etc. It's more free form or fluid, and the idea is that attendees at those sessions would bring their own questions, bring their own discussion points to get the benefit of knowledge or hindsight or experience from not just the people hosting the session, but hopefully from those in attendance as well. So that's what we call a fireside chat nowadays. I thought I'd talk about it today because a friend of mine recently tweeted that he lamented the fact that we're seeing the term fireside chat, that we should never see it in the realm of the IT landscape. I replied and said maybe it's okay if we actually genuinely have a fireside, so that's a challenge to the user groups out there. If you're going to hold a fireside chat, maybe organise it at a pub or a hotel where there actually is a fireside. Obviously around Christmas time in winter if you're in Europe, not so much in my case here in Australia where it's blistering hot outside around Christmas time. Now sometimes I've been equally cynical about fireside chats or open Q&A at conferences and user group meetings. I've sometimes thought, well, maybe it's just a case of there isn't actually enough what I used to call proper content to fill a session, therefore we allocate some time for these more fluid sessions. Sometimes the reason they haven't worked is because attendees can be cautious about sharing information in these sessions. It's really about solving problems these sessions, about what the pain points are, so it's understandable that people don't want to come along and, for lack of a better term, air their dirty laundry in public amongst hopefully their peers and even strangers to say, oh yes, here's where I'm struggling, here's where I can't achieve things, or here's where I've broken things. That's a bit of an obstacle to overcome, so I understand why sometimes these panel sessions fall pretty flat because everyone's just sitting there in a stunned silence hoping that someone else will actually kickstart the conversation. But I've just got back from the Sangam conference in India, in Bangalore this year, and on the first day we had a dedicated room for what was called hands-on labs, and that was that normal kind of construct you'll see for hands-on labs. People bring their own laptops. On the second day, that entire room was dedicated to what we call fireside chats. It's literally all day long, each on a different particular subject matter area. There was one on Exadata, one on RAC, and Chris Saxon and myself held one just called the Ask Tom, come along and have a chat with the Ask Tom team. So there was a very broad agenda there. Anyone could bring up whatever topic they want. Yet in every single one of them, the thing that blew me away was, number one is they were chock-a-block, they were full. So the room held 50, but in every single one I poked my head into, and the one that Chris and I hosted, there was actually people standing around the back room as well. People were dying to get into this thing. And the second thing, which was perhaps the thing that blew me away more, was the moment we said, let's get this session underway, bang, 20 hands go up. Everyone wanted to ask a question. And even if they weren't asking a question, people just wanted to share opinions. Someone would ask a question on, say, the optimizer, and someone would leap in with, oh, and this has been my experience with that particular part of the optimizer, etc. Chris and I had questions being fired at us left, right, and center constantly throughout the session. And every time we offered an answer, or even those ones we couldn't answer, people in the audience would be happy to jump in and offer their thoughts, their opinions, and their experiences as well. At the end of the hour, we pretty much had to cut it short. We said, look, we're done. We have to move on for the next session. And people were like, well, let's get more of this done. And people wanted to continue the conversation. It really changed my mind in terms of the way these panel things can actually succeed. If the audience is prepared to actually jump into it with enthusiasm, I think everyone, including the people hosting it, such as myself and Chris, get a lot of value out of it. So that's my message to user groups out there. It's often tough if you're a small user group or a local user group to consistently get speakers and content every month or every couple of months or every quarter for your local meetups. It's tough to get people to produce slides, research a topic, come up with expert information for the attendees. And as a result, sometimes user groups will defer meetings or not hold them. Perhaps the fireside chat or the panel situation is actually a way of circumventing that shortcoming. What you can do is just say, we're going to have the normal meeting as we normally would, but we're not going to have a set topic. We might have a framework, something like we're just going to talk about RAC, or we're just going to talk about application development, etc. But keeping it fairly loose and saying it is up to the attendees to actually jump in and make this thing work. Obviously, we can try to get a few people with perhaps a greater level of experience or a greater recognition in the community to perhaps be a master of ceremonies or host the session. But I think that's all that's required to actually get an enormous amount of value from your local community. We can all benefit on that. I think we all win, and user group communities can keep strengthening themselves just by hosting regular events, even if they don't have a particular speaker that they can utilize for that particular moment. So whether you're going to run a real expert panel, a face-to-face session where people come along and meet up and chat, or a virtual expert panel, which is what something like Ask Tom Office Hours is, the concept of really just making people available and giving them a forum, whether it's virtual or real, to come together and talk about common topics. I think there's a lot of value in this, something I was skeptical about in times gone past. The Indian Sangam conference, in particular the Indian attendees and their enthusiasm for technology, is what's really taught me that these things can succeed as long as we all get on board, we're on the same page and really want to make it succeed. So local user groups, have fun with your expert panels. If I can help you with that, please reach out to me. Otherwise, I'll see you at the next Ask Tom Office Hours. Bye for now.